Hello, I'm Nikes and you've all read the title. So let's dive right in. What would be different if Naruto was a girl? Well, let me go out on a limb and say that it's very much possible that nothing changes at all. The adventures that the original Naruto goes through, his development and the way the world as a whole reacts to her might not change all that much. Bullying and social isolation isn't exclusive to young boys. I mean, Boruto might not happen and Hinata's crush might take on another form, and there might be even more sexual tension between Sasuke and Naruto than there was in the original canon, but other than that, it's possible that nothing will change. But in that case, this video would be very pointless, so I'm going to introduce some butterflies to conjure up some whirlwinds. Hopefully those butterflies won't seem too unreasonable. So as a first butterfly, I'd like to summon one Ino Yamanaka. Why her? Well, because of all the people that might make a change in Naruto's childhood, yes, that's what I'm calling female Naruto, I consider Ino the most likely. The reason for that is the relationship between Ino and Sakura. In flashbacks, we see that Sakura used to be an insecure little girl who was bullied for her large forehead. Now, Ino reached out to Sakura who was bullied and made an effort to befriend her. Given that she did that, I think it's very believable that Ino might reach out to Naruto in a similar fashion. If she saw a little girl sitting on that famous swing, tears in her eyes from being rejected yet again by those of her age, I believe Ino might take pity there and try to reach out. Well, why didn't she do so in canon? Well, at that age, girls and boys do tend to keep themselves mostly separate. Boys play with the boys and the girls with the girls. Exceptions exist, of course, but on average this tends to be true, and I believe it enough to justify this canon divergence. When will this happen? I'd say it happens after Sakura and Ino already made friends. The reason for this is that Naruto's loneliness isn't as obvious as Sakura's. Naruto, just like Naruto, tries to hide her own pain and loneliness behind a lot of false bravado. Maybe this wasn't always the case, but when a child cries and nobody comes to its aid, it will eventually try other ways to protect itself. Naruto had a terrible childhood. We know that the canon Naruto lived in his own apartment with almost no oversight from a very early age. What happened before that time is something we can only speculate on, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. So let's wind back time all the way when Minato died and the question of Naruto's guardianship must have come up. Given that Jiraiya was her godfather, he would probably have been offered the chance to raise her, which he refused. He refused in canon, and I see no reason why a gender would change that. Now, Jiraiya's actions can be explained here, though this too is only speculation. After the death of the fourth Hokage, they'd probably need someone of his skill to run missions. With the death of its greatest shinobi and the village having suffered a lot of damage from the Kyuubi attack, the other nations might just have wanted to test Konoha's strength, and it was important to keep up a strong front. The same was done in the aftermath of the Sound Sand invasion later on, with most Jonin out in the field and Genin forced to take on missions that would normally be considered beyond them. Jiraiya might also have been just too heartbroken to take care of Naruto, a living reminder of the student he had lost. None of that justifies his behavior. It's still a very douchey move to leave your goddaughter to fend for herself and not even introduce yourself until much later. I'm just trying to explain it. He might check up on her once in a blue moon, when he is in the village to see if she's alright, and secretly leave her a frog-themed present like Naruto's canon wallet, but that's about it. Now, that still leaves the question of where Naruto ended up in her earliest years. Her identity as the daughter of the fourth Hokage is a secret, and unlike her Jinchuriki status, a well-kept one. That Jinchuriki status, I think, is a reasonable explanation for why no family was willing to take her in. The next option is the Konoha orphanage, the same orphanage that Kabuto went to. I'm going to say she didn't end up there either, given that it's never brought up in canon. Maybe the third Hokage considered Naruto too valuable to allow Danzo the opportunity to influence her. Whether because she is a Jinchuriki or because she's the daughter of a dear friend. Because Danzo did have his finger in that particular orphanage, and I'm going to guess the third wasn't completely unaware of that. Or maybe Naruto was considered too dangerous by whoever was in charge of the orphanage at the time to be allowed in. Or maybe she did go there briefly but was kicked out at such an early age she barely remembers it. What I'm going to headcanon here is that the third Hokage had a continuous stream of D-rank missions that said they had to take care of baby Naruto until she was old enough to take care of herself. By which he meant until she was old enough to walk, talk, and know how to put food into a microwave. The shinobi took care of Naruto's physical needs, but didn't really take care of the emotional needs a child at that age has. Naruto had no parental figures at that age of any kind. All of his backstory was to explain why Naruto, as a general rule, tried to act out instead of cry a lot. What's the point of crying if nobody seems to care? Now, before we go back to Ino and Sakura, I'd like to address another event that happened a little before that time. The incident where Hinata was being bullied by 3 boys and Ken and Naruto came to her rescue. I'm going to say that this event happened exactly the same way. Naruto is not shy about picking a fight. I mean, it's not like anyone is going to fight on her behalf. I don't see why this event would change based totally on her gender. Would Hinata's crush change based on her gender? Well, at the age they're at, I'd say the question is irrelevant. Hinata looked up to the one who came to her rescue, and that won't change. Whether something romantic will come of that? Well, that's for me to know and for you to find out in subsequent videos. Okay, now back to Ino and Sakura. While crying and openly showing her feelings is a rarity for her, on this day it all became too much. She tries to hide her face with her sleeve, but only half-heartedly. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a part of her hopes, against hope, against all reason and prior experience, that someone just might give a damn. Out of the corner of her eye, she would see two girls approaching. These were in fact part of the group that had refused to let her be part of their play earlier. She honestly doesn't know what to do. A part of her wants to put on the mask of the delinquent troublemaker, become the Naruto who can stand up to the world and not be sad she's not a part of it. A part of her that she doesn't want to admit to wants these two to take pity on her. If not that, at least make them feel guilty for making her cry. Making others feel guilty tended to be the best you could usually get for her tears. Hey, are you alright? The blonde one, Ino, Naruto thought her name was asked. Ino, for her part, was also unsure about all this. I mean, this was Naruto the troublemaker, the one who scribbled stupid pictures on their sensei's classboard when he was away, the one who always showed up late to class and sometimes not at all. She had these strange whisker marks and didn't act like a proper girl. Her hair wasn't that well kept and her clothes tended to be not all that clean most of the time. Clearly her parents didn't raise her right. She hadn't been the one to tell her off before, but she also hadn't objected to it. Neither she nor Sakura wanted anything to do with Naruto normally. I mean, she was way too abrasive on top of everything else, but seeing her in this state still bothered her. Sakura took a little convincing to come along. Sakura was very much Ino's follower at this point. Why would you care? Naruto would respond, looking at them and making them see her red tear-stricken face. Let them feel guilty, she thought. Okay, look, we didn't mean to make you cry, Ino would say. Technically it had been her that made her cry, but she still felt bad about it. I'm fine, Naruto would say, because really, what else was she going to say? Admit to weakness? Beg for help? Sakura and Ino would look at each other, each wondering how they should respond to this rather obvious lie. Do you want to hang out with us? Ino would ask, still somewhat unsure, but this somehow felt like the right thing to do. Naruto would blink twice, wiping her nose with the sleeves of her shirt while doing so. What? She would ask, not sure if she heard correctly. I said, do you want to hang out with us? Ino would ask again with more force this time, expecting the offer to be turned down at this point. If Naruto wanted to cry by herself, that was fine, but she didn't need to act as if the very idea of hanging out with the two of them was so ludicrous it merited double-checking. Yes, Naruto said, her heart, which until that point had been contracting painfully due to the sadness, seemed to do a flip-flop. Well, come along then, we could try finding some flowers. My parents own a flower shop, you know? Naruto would follow along, and for the rest of their time together act very unlike both Sakura and Ino were used to. Naruto at this point would be adopting the most inoffensive behavior she could think of, and simply quietly go along with both other girls. She spoke only when spoken to, and answered any question with short, safe answers. When asked whether she wanted a couple of flowers to bring home to show to her own parents, she simply said, no. Throughout all the rest of the day, Naruto felt like she should say something more, to thank them somehow. But she was so unused to thanking anyone for anything, the words didn't leave the privacy of her own thoughts. When the time to say goodbye for today came, she aped the other girls, see you tomorrow. The next day, Naruto made a beeline towards the academy, arriving not only on time but almost an hour early. Remembering the spot where Sakura and Ino tended to sit together, she set herself right next to where they would normally sit. For the next hour, Naruto would wonder about what would happen when Ino and Sakura arrived. Would they see her and go sit somewhere else? Would they insist she surrender her spot to the girl who usually occupied this spot? Students didn't have a strictly assigned spot, but everyone did sort of pick a seat and consider it theirs. So what if everyone would gang up on her and insist she move? The first person whose arrival she was waiting/dreading was the girl whose seat she had taken. As expected, this girl wanted her seat back. Naruto claimed that she was here first, and if the other girl wanted her seat back, they should just try and make her move. A small fight would break out at this point between Naruto, the girl whose seat she had stolen, and a few other girls who all sided against Naruto. It was to this scene that Sakura would arrive, seeing Naruto pushing and pulling against several other girls for the seat next to the one that was traditionally hers. Naruto, what do you think you're doing? I wanted to sit here is all. I came here first and they can't make me leave, Naruto would say, at this point having almost forgotten her original reason and was fully in her me against the world mindset. She resolved she wouldn't leave the spot now, even if Sakura or Ino insisted she do so. Sakura would sigh at this and say, If you want to sit next to us, then let's just go sit somewhere else. That knocked the fight right out of her and made her remember what she actually wanted. Grabbing her things, she quickly followed after her pink-haired friend? Was that what they were now? Sakura went to sit next to the spot where Naruto would usually sit. Everyone always liked to leave at least one seat between her and them, so it wasn't like they were stealing someone else's spot now. Ino arrived not long after, searching the classroom with her eyes until she spotted her and Sakura, and simply took her seat on Naruto's other side, saying hi to her and Sakura as if today was a normal school day like any other. Naruto, if possible, paid even less attention to their sensei's lecture than usual. She was too busy contemplating her new situation, what it would mean, and trying to keep the lump in her throat under control. She didn't want Ino or Sakura to think her weird after all. And that's where we're going to leave things for now. Thank you for watching, and please continue on to part 2 if this grabbed your interest. Nikes out.